Hi guys, welcome to this video. Martin speaking. This is the next instalment in our How to Play 40k 7th edition. In this episode we're going to look at characters and their involvement in the game. Quite a simple video, but there are important rules that need to be looked at. So what are characters? There are two types of characters. There's character and independent character. Character simply means a sergeant or a champion or whatever it might be, leader of a unit. So this is somebody who might have a very slightly different stat line. They might have different attacks or a different weapon, something along those lines. Say it could be a Space Marine sergeant, so he'll have one slightly higher leadership, for example, if you've made him a veteran, so on and so forth. You'll look at that and you'll see those in the codex. If the model is classed as a character, it cannot leave a unit. It stays in the unit, but you always test off that character when he's alive. You test off his leadership, or you use his initiative for morale checks or anything like that. I say sometimes they just vary ever so slightly. These characters can also make a lookout sir roll. Now we're going to go on to lookout sir in just one moment, because the other kind of character is an independent character. So these are models that, typically speaking, are one model, and they can move completely on their own, or they can join a unit. To join a unit, you must end your movement phase within 2 inches of the unit you wish to join. And obviously let your opponent know that that character is now inside that unit as well, or is part of that unit. The benefit of joining a unit is the unit gets to use your initiative, your leadership, things like that. You can use your unit as a shield to protect wounds, because you would still always take from the first model, and if your character isn't standing on his own, the unit has to be targeted, and then therefore your opponent would have to shoot through all the unit if your guy's at the back of any firing. The negative side to it is he's not independent anymore. He's not running around on his own. He's restricted to the movement then of that said unit. You can leave a unit at any time in your movement phase, and all you have to do is make sure that you, again, notify your opponent he's detaching from that unit, and you have to stay at least 2 inches away. Sorry, 3 inches away then from the unit, just to show that you've left outside that unit, and you can go on to anywhere. You cannot leave one unit and join another unit in the same turn. Worth mentioning that part. Very seldom would you particularly want to do that, but you can't do it. And if you are caught in the assault phase, if you're part of a unit in the assault phase, you can't elect to detach from a unit. So if you happen to have I'll use Kasoro Khan from the White Scars, for example. He has the hit and run rule. He can't elect to hit and run without his whole unit hit and running. And we'll cover hit and run when we get into those special rules. So I mentioned just before about lookout sir. Characters can make out what's called a lookout sir roll. And what this is again, from a narrative point of view, if you imagine you've got this champion or this captain or a warlord who stood in the unit. If a bullet was to come towards him, it's quite acceptable to believe that one of your infantrymen would jump in front and take the bullet for you. So we call it a lookout sir. We roll a dice, and for an independent character, on the roll of a 2+, another model jumps in the way. On a normal character, it's a 4+. So if we successfully make the lookout sir, the wound then gets put on to a marine that you allocate within the unit, and you can make as many lookout sirs as you want. So your champion might be at the very front of the unit, 6 shots hit, and they all come in, and you get 4 wounds off the 6 shots. You can lookout sir every single one of those and potentially kill the rest of your unit, or get them to take their armor saves as normal. You're quite all right to do it. You can look out say pretty much most attacks that come in. It will specifically say in the rules if you cannot make a lookout sir roll. It's not a saving throw, so against magic spells and things like that, or psychic spells I should say, it's still acceptable to make the lookout sir. Even if it's a random allocation, so inside a tank, the tank's exploded, and after you've randomly allocated the wound, it's landed on your company sergeant. You can still, on a 4+, make that lookout sir, because he's just a standard character. If it was a Space Marine captain, on a 2+, he passes it off. And that covers lookout sir. It's an important thing to remember, and it's a good thing to do to keep those slightly better models in play a little bit longer. So what else can characters do? Independent characters, as we've already said, they can move freely. They are much more versatile part of the army, and that's again to insinuate that they're higher than the rank and file troops. They're more skillful, they are more knowledgeable in war, so they move slightly differently in the fact that they are on their own. They don't have to stay in coherency with anybody. But also, when you get into a challenge with a character, before any blows are struck, so before the first initiative step, if you've charged somebody, you can issue a challenge. So how do we issue challenges? Literally, as I just said, initiative step 10, so before anything's done, you as the charger get the first chance to make a challenge. If you don't want to make a challenge, your opponent can then challenge you. Any character that is within your unit can issue a challenge. As the challenger, you have to say, this model, so again we'll use Khosrow Khan as an example. So Khosrow Khan is going to make a challenge to your whatever the character is in the unit. Now your opponent doesn't have to accept, and you don't get to choose who your opponent accepts with. So if your opponent has got two characters, maybe an independent character and a character, he can accept with just the character. Fine, you might just kill him really easy, but he's avoided the hits going on to his warlord or whatever it might be. It's a tactical move that a lot of people make. It's always fun though when a warlord goes in and challenges another warlord, they both accept and they fight it out. So how do we fight the challenges out? Very simple. You put the two models together, slightly separate from the rest of the battle. By all means, you can keep them in and just move them into base-to-base contact, just swap some minis around. The general preference with this to show that they're in the challenge is to just put the models ever so slightly to the side of the rest of the battle, toe-to-toe, or base-to-base I should say, with each other, and they fight their challenge at the relevant initiative steps that we went through in the assault phase. That doesn't change in the slightest bit. You run through, you fight your challenge. Now this is where it's changed from a 7th edition point of view to those who were watching from previous editions. It used to be the case that if you made a challenge and you killed your opponent, any spare wounds, so you might kill them with an instant death, but you've caused 6 wounds from however many dice you've rolled, however it works. The first one kills them, the other 5 are then just lost. That's not the case anymore. They now spill into the rest of the combat. So once you've made the kill, all remaining wounds will still spill in. It also works the other way around now, that the guys who are fighting can't actively hurt anybody. The unit can't hurt the challenge that's going on unless there is nobody left to fight. So again, if your unit's fighting, say it's, I don't know, Space Marines against Orcs, and there are 8 Space Marines and there are only 4 Orcs, the Space Marines have gone first because of their initiative step, and with enough wounds they've wiped through all the Orcs and there's 3 wounds left over, and those wounds would actually transfer onto the person that you've issued the challenge against as well. It's a big change from 6th edition, that, and it's one that a lot of people seem to get wrong. The other thing that's worth noting at this point is, for combat resolution, all the wounds that you've caused against the challenged character count through. So where I mentioned there, you might instant death somebody on the first wound. If you had 3 wounds and you've caused instant death on the first one, all 3 still go into your combat resolution. So you would add 3 to the result, not just the one that killed him. You do add the 3 wounds on because you've in effect stripped all the wounds. So do you have to accept a challenge? No, you don't. You can refuse a challenge. If somebody challenges you and you think, I've got no chance of winning this, I'm going to run and cower in the corner, then you can just deny the challenge and you just say, no, I'm not going to do it. The problem with that is your character that you denied it with, you choose which it is. So if you've got 2 characters, you'll say, oh, my sergeant denies the challenge, however you want to play it. That model then can't take part in any of the rest of the fight subphase. So he's literally, his attacks won't count for anything. You don't roll for his attacks, although he can still be slain. If the rest of the unit's slain and there's only your cowering captain in the corner who refused the challenge, then he will still take wounds. So always think carefully before you refuse a challenge. Sometimes it's better to accept, even if you think the odds are against you. You never know, you might get lucky. Your opponent might be very unlucky and roll really badly. But again, as I said in the assault phase as well, assault is a tricky part of the game. So when we're talking about challenges, maybe don't worry about them for the first few games that you play, and then as you get used to the rest of the rules and you're picking and you're not worrying about everything else, then start focusing on this section. Challenges are lots of fun and I encourage you to use them, but maybe just hold off with them for your first few games. So that covers characters. As I said to you guys, it's not a particularly long video, this one, but it is quite an important one, because the characters are what make the army, really, aren't they? They're the leaders, they're the guys who send us out to battle. It's also just popped into my head actually there, it's also worth noting that you don't come out of a challenge until one model is dead, or if you've lost combat and you've had to fail your morale test, you ran away, then obviously the challenge is finished at that point. But you just keep staying in that challenge until one model is dead or you've broken away from combat. But so that was just popped back into my head before I finish off with the video. And at that point, disclaimer as always, I'm not a rules expert, I'm not a rules guru. If I've got something wrong, write it in the comments below. If you like what I've done, write it in the comments below. Give me some suggestions. Feedback's always good for me. Press the like button if you like it. Please press the share button as much as you can. And if you haven't already, then subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next video, guys. Thanks very much for watching.